Welcome to Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we are entering the home stretch of this Alberta municipal election cycle, and that means across this province, candidates are stepping forward with visions for stronger communities, smarter growth, and more responsive local governments. Today, we are honored once again to be joined by Jeff Davison, candidate for Calgary Mayor. We sat down with Jeff back in 2024. Davison is a former city councillor and business leader who brings real-world experience, collaborative leadership, and bold thinking to public service. Raised in Calgary, Jeff understands the promise and its challenges. Throughout his career, he's worked to strengthen neighborhoods, support small businesses, and build infrastructure that meets the needs of a growing population. Jeff, thank you so much for sitting down with me again. It feels like it's been a while since we last chatted, back in December, actually, of the last year, when we last had a conversation about your run for mayor. We are now less than 70 days away from Election Day. We've gone about 8 months since we last chatted. How have the doors been?
I continue to hear the two top things. Number one, roll back the blanket rezoning. Number two, our city doesn't feel safe. And so everything we started with back in October, everything we said is really starting to resonate with people. And I think that's why it feels good. I mean, I'll be honest, it feels like a very different campaign than the last time. It feels like Calgarians are very in tune with what the issues are. And more importantly, we're aligned with what those issues are, which I would say was very different back in 2021.
So how is the Jeff Davison of the 25 campaign different than the 21 campaign?
I think you watch people go on the redemption tour once in a while, and you kind of have to laugh, because I think my wife always puts it into the best perspective for me. What you see is what you get. And so it's not so much that I'm a different person or I've learned different ways. It's, maybe you choose to listen differently, and maybe, you apply the theory of what that listening translates into work going forward. I'll tell you, like the last 3 years at, running the Prostate Cancer Center have been eye-opening, right? To me, everything now is about creating outcomes, positive outcomes for people, whether we're doing that on a daily basis for the one patient that we see, or we're doing that for an entire city of 1.5 million people. It's about where are we going and what's the outcome we're driving towards. And I would say I am hyper-focused on that now.
And where are we going?
Well, I think
in the current mandate with the current crop of council right now, are we going into a good place or are we going to a bad place?
Well, I don't think we're going anywhere, and I think that's the problem. I think Calgarians are stuck, and they're saying, what's happening here? I remember my time on city council, we had a strategic plan. We had the One Calgary vision. We had the plan that we were aligned to. I haven't seen that alignment in this city council. And simply for some of these people sitting there going, well, when I become the mayor, I'm going to do. It's like, I'm sorry, but you have a seat at the table. You've had all the opportunity to create change, create alignment, and get things done for Calgarians, and you've done nothing. Nothing. Right? Our city is not safer, despite city council telling us that they think it's safer. Walk with me down any street in this city, and I can tell you, people do not feel safe downtown. They do not feel safe on transit, and that is a major problem for a city that is growing by 70,000 people a year.
So under a Davison mayoral of Calgary, how would that change? Because safety is perspective, right? Like if I walk downtown Calgary, I feel safe because I'm a bigger guy. So I'm going to have that lived experience of people probably not going to come up to me and go, oh, there's a big guy, I'm just not going to talk to you. And I'm not trying to be sexist here, but if a female walks down, they're probably going to have a different experience than I do.
You know what? Yes, but we'll stop you there, because I have physically watched a construction worker, probably your size, your stature, your age, standing there minding his business on a street corner when, one of the fentanyl floppers grabbed a shovel and hauled off and hit him out of nowhere. Like, the randomness to attacks is actually the problem. And so, I think it's easy for us to say we're guys, maybe we feel a little safer, we feel a little tougher, we feel like we can handle ourselves, but not when it comes to crime like that. I had a buddy of mine 3 weeks ago. He was downtown, he was coming out of a store, and literally some guy walked up to him, pepper sprayed him, stole his keys to his car, and off he went. And, here's a guy who's 6'2" and probably 200 pounds and fit. It has nothing to do with who you are anymore, and that's the problem.
So how do we stop the randomization of crime? Because putting more police on the street, is that the answer? Is it more mental health and addiction support? What is the answer? Because we're at 70 days and or however many days if you're watching this, what is the answer that people are looking for right now? Because, and I say this respectfully, and I say this in the context that I'm living in the Northeast right now, if you put more cops on the street, the newcomers to Calgarians will not see that as a positive thing. They'll see, this is what I left. I didn't want more police on the streets. How do we fix the issue?
Well,
that's good for one Calgary.
I think, first of all, what I'm hearing in the Northeast is very different than last time, and I think it's almost opposite.
Okay.
What I do hear from people is businesses are being broken into.
Yep.
Crime is out of control on the streets. Gun violence is happening in their neighborhoods. Their children don't feel safe because gangs are in schools. I think these are all big problems that in 2021, I would completely agree with you that more police on the streets was not necessarily seen as the benefit. I can tell you now, it seems like the answer to this is very different. It doesn't matter where you go in the city. And we focus a lot on the crime downtown because, yes, there's, give or take 3,500 people on the streets downtown. Remember that the vast amount of crime, like 90+% of the crime, is committed by about 185 of those people. So it tells me we've got a couple of problems here. Number one, we have a policing issue that we need to deal with the drug dealers and we need to deal with the crime itself. But the remainder of that is a healthcare problem, right? The mental health and addiction side is really something that I'll tell you, like going through my day job now and understanding how proactive care can change outcomes and can change the system, that's where we need to focus. And so where I think council has actually failed on all of this is the fact that they've never built a partnership with the province, right? And now they act like mom and dad, don't treat them like a partner, and they take lots away. And whether they do or not, and whether that's right or not, isn't the issue. The issue is, you divided yourself based on ideology and you refuse to become partners. And for me, I don't really care who the province is. I know where I stand. I know what the programs are I want to drive, but it's up to me as the mayor to build a partnership with the premier and their team, whoever that may be. It's no different than the federal government. We need to start breaking down barriers and we need to start working together. And part of that is actually putting task forces together to say, we have to at least agree on a common problem. Let's start there, right? What's the problem and how do we identify it collectively? And a lot of even our civic partners and community groups will play roles in how we solve this. But we first have to agree on what's the problem. We have to agree on how do we solve it collectively. And then we have to agree on whose lane is what, right? So what's my lane? What's the provincial lane? And then how can some of our other resources help us, as well, without getting in everybody's way, right?
You're starting to sound like Dan McWilliams, Minister of Municipal Affairs, by saying municipalities need to stay in their lane. Have we gotten too far out of the municipal lane?
I don't think it's about that. I don't think it's about staying out of your lane. I think it's knowing what your role is. And so when it comes to crime prevention, and dealing with the mental health and addiction side, like let's put it into context, right? The city budget is what, $5.5 billion a year, right? Yeah. Healthcare is about $24 billion, right? So we have two options. We either figure out a program to work together and figure out how we're going to solve it, or you need to give me $10 billion and I'll fix it in Calgary. Because I'll tell you this, the one thing about Calgary, we are the entrepreneurial hub of the world, and I will put the flag in the ground and state that. We have, all the talent, all the resources, all the right minds that are brilliant here to solve this problem. I'm not interested in waiting till some other jurisdiction in North America solves the problem. I think we can lead our way out of this problem, because let's face it, it's not a Calgary issue. It's an everywhere issue. But we've got to start figuring it out, and there will be trial and error, right? There will be times that we try something and it's not going to work, and we have to be a government that stands up and says, we tried, it didn't work, we need to pivot, but here's what we do next. And you've got to bring people along for that, or you're never going to get ahead and solve this problem.
One of the other areas that we often forget to talk about, and you mentioned it a little bit in that statement, but the repeat offenders. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest crux of a lot of municipal issues right now. Yeah. People getting out on bail and being back on the street within hours, if not days, of when they first committed a crime and got arrested. That is a federal issue. Mm-hmm. That is something that Mark Carney, Sean Fraser, Attorney General, will have to address in the short term. Now, municipalities are standing up and talking a little bit more openly about it. The mayor of North Battleford, Saskatchewan, just wrote a letter to the Minister of the Attorney General and the Prime Minister to change bail reform. Mm-hmm. Are you in favor of that?
Absolutely.
How do we?
I mean, I think we need to get collectively together, whether it's through the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association or whatever
You're
we're
telling your age
days.
There, man. It's Alberta Municipalities.
Whatever we're calling
Not
it.
AUMA. Yeah, come on.
Whatever we're calling it these days. But look, I mean, it's got to be the focus on the agenda for all municipalities. I mean, you just take Alberta alone, right? It's not a Calgary-Edmonton problem that we're seeing. It's a Lethbridge problem. It's a Bicycle problem. It's a Fort Mac problem. It's an everywhere problem. So again, this is where we've got to be able to work across party lines and work with our provincial partners and work with our community, community engagement groups to say, how do we solve this together, right? Like this is a big, complex problem. But doing nothing and saying we're out of options is not the solution.
Do you have a strong relationship with the Calgary Police Service right now?
Yeah, I think so. I know a lot of members. I know a lot of the association people. The teams there. I think they're frustrated too.
And that's what
right?
was my next question is, are you hearing a sense, because when I speak to members, I'm getting a sense that there is frustration, that they're not getting the support that they need from this council or any council in the past, because things are getting worse and it's not getting better.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece that has to change, right? And, it's frustrating for police when they don't feel supported. It's frustrating when, the things even the members are asking for is not necessarily what's reflected in the budget. It's frustrated for them when we don't get, bail reform happening. Again, it's the responsibility of every order of government to step up and say, here's the plan to work together to solve this problem. And I'll tell you, like, the one superpower that I would say I have is bringing people together, finding the common ground, and getting it done. And that's what we plan to do with this.
Over the last year and a half, there has been let's correct that. Since October 7th of last year, there has been a rise of anti-Semitic hate in this city. And I say that married to a Jewish man. I see it on a regular basis, and it is scaring people of the Jewish community. How do we protect one group of people without making it seem like we're only protecting Jewish people?
It's like corporate culture, right? When you have a different set of circumstances for one group than another, how do you create unification in your corporate culture? You don't, right? And by the way, consequences is not a bad word. It just means we've got to have consistency in how we treat people. And that's what Canada has always stood for. And so it's on us to stand up and say, as we've done many times in the past when we have marginalized communities that are being negatively impacted by other groups, enough's enough. This is Canada. We're a unified nation. We are a unified people. It's got to stop.
The Fraser Institute just recently released a report back in June that says municipalities are not spending wisely. That's the crux of their entire report. Do you think the city of Calgary is spending wisely?
No.
How do we get back to spending wisely in a budget that is a 4-year cycle?
Budgeting, number one, on a strategic plan. So having a vision, having a direction, understanding what, the best thing about every election is every member of council has been out there pounding the pavement. And
they should be.
And they should be, but that's probably what got them there. Bring those ideas to the table, right? Listen to the people at the doors. What are they saying, right? Because that is the formulation of our 4-year plan. I can tell you, I think there's been a serious lack of infrastructure investment in our city at a time when the city has grown staff by 23% in the last 3.5 years. And 40% now of our roads have fallen into disrepair. Our water is inconsistent at best. I still don't think we have a long-term solution for the water main break. I think we have to start thinking through that. And let's face it, our developments and how we develop this city is broken, right? 70,000 people roughly move to Calgary every year, right? How are we going to keep up with that growth? How are we going to make sure the taps turn on? How are we going to make sure the roads are paved? How are we going to service this city with transit and police and fire and everything else that's essential to being a good city that attracts people from around the world?
We can't do that, though.
We've got to play catch up, right?
We can't spend like drunken sailors because legally municipalities have to balance their budget every year at the end of the year.
Absolutely. It's
What's
reprioritization.
priority,
Well, exactly those things I just said, right? Get back to basics. What are the lines of business the city needs to be in, and what are the things we need to get out of? And I'll tell you, our first thing on council, before we start talking about rolling back blanket rezonings and before we start, getting down the path of budgeting, what is the plan? Over the next 4 years, what do we want to achieve? What's our strategic vision? And then we've got to line up to it. And what's really important, and I learned this running a healthcare charity, it's really important to talk about what we have and where we're going. What's really also important to talk about is what's not on the table. What are the things we have to park right now? Because you're right, we can't do everything for everyone. We have to sit back and think, what are the priority lists saying? And that is core services right now. And so until we can build into that plan the idea of how we've restructured those core services to meet the demand that's going on, everything else has got to get put to the shelves.
But in order to do that, you need to bring a team along. And that means you need 7 of your members of your council to vote with you for or against any issue.
Sure.
How do you do that? How do you ensure that the key priorities that you believe are important are going to line up with 7 other people on that council, or all 15 members of your council? Because that is one thing that a lot of people are looking at this council right now and saying it is dysfunction. There's no common narrative that's coming out of this council every week. It is just dysfunction after dysfunction, and that's me saying it, and that's me having people on the council who've been on this show. But we want to get back to just getting along. Like, let's get along for the betterment of the community. We need that one Calgary mentality. How do you ensure that your infrastructure projects are going to line up with the other people on council?
Well, I think number one, it's about prioritizing what people have said, right? I think council's biggest challenge right now is that they have this very top-down attitude of we know best, right? And they don't. They're there to represent people. So let's listen to what those priorities are. Those priorities should be reflective of how we come together with a strategic plan. And once you've got that strategic plan, it's that much easier to have 12 votes, not just, the 7 you need to go along with you. Because I'll tell you, like right now, I feel like we already have the party system on city council. I think you've got the yes mayor party and you've got the naysayer party. And where I think all of them have failed is in this idea of building collaboration, right? When I was on council, I don't recall ever losing a vote. And I would get people like Ward Sutherland and Drew Farrell to vote for the same thing. That tells me it's about bringing the merits of the project to the table. I've always sort of disagreed with this idea that the party system at the municipal level is the right thing, because I look back at my career, like in energy, in film, in technology, in healthcare now, even on city council. I never needed a party to get things done. And in fact, I kind of look at it like, running a charity now, if I had 14 people at my management table that just said, yes, Jeff, well, that's what we're going to do, I'd fire all of them. Why do I need them there? I don't need to pay their salaries to have them there if it's just about me. I want diversity of thought. I want innovation. I want new and effective ways that, we can affect people's lives for the better. The only way you do that is by having the conversation, not just simply agreeing for the sake of agreeing.
When we talk about budget, there's 2 big infrastructure projects that are going on in this city as we speak. One is the Green Line, one is the arena. Now, you and I chatted about the arena back in October, and you said the current deal that is being put into place is a bad deal. It was horrible compared to the deal that you negotiated with the city. The Green Line, it seems to be a boondoggle after boondoggle, and it just seems to not be. We've officially had the grounds turning ceremony, which is great. I'll believe it when it actually opens that it's done. How do we get these infrastructure projects back on track? Because right now it seems like we are spinning our wheels and we're spending money hand over fist. And the last time I checked, the money that we're paying today is not what it's going to be in 10 years when we're still working on these projects.
So let's start with the arena project. Completely agree with you, but it's something I'm not going to get in the way of because I'm after the bigger vision, right? I'm after the vision of how do we build the entertainment and cultural district. I'm after the vision of adding 35,000 residences to the downtown. I'm after the vision of being a city that has things to do and is safe to do so that we continue to build on our tourism economy. We continue to build on bringing headquarters here and, providing a tax base out of our downtown that comes back to being meaningful. And all of that is really important when it comes to the fact that I have said we're going to freeze taxes for 4 years, which I know we'll get to in a minute. On the Green Line side, it's really tough because the challenge I think we've always had with Green Line is the lack of transparency on it. I mean, I don't feel like I could sit here and tell you today, here's the plan, because I don't really know where the numbers are at. I don't really know what the construction stage is at. I think a lot of that has been either miscommunicated or on purpose not communicated. I think our biggest challenge is people have overwhelmingly said Green Line has to get built. And so day one, we need to come in there and say, okay, we need to get a handle on this and we need to get going. Because it's been, a decade plus, and we still don't have tracks on the ground. And I remember being on council. I helped formulate the Green Line committee because I remember sitting in city council and, we were talking about things like community gardens and what they were going to look like. And I had to put up my hand and I said, all due respect, where's the train going? Right? Because it's a failure with city council to have some project management control on things, right? Your job is to set the vision. Your job is to put the budget in place. Let the experts deliver it. And I think the city has forgotten, we don't build things as the city. We hire the experts to do it for us. Our job is to simply enable the infrastructure project to happen. And we've got to get back to that because what it's caused is a bunch of people who think they know better that have very little expertise on the subject, causing delay after delay after delay. again, much like the idea of policing, when and where you don't treat a partner like the provincial government, and let's be clear, you don't have to love the province, right? A lot of people don't, a lot of people do. But you have to treat them like partners. When you are invested into outcomes together, you need to bring people along. You have to show your work. And in the absence of showing your work, your partners are going to get upset. And I think that is now what happened. So, I'm encouraged that it seems like we're moving forward. I think it's a project I've always stood for. I've always believed in building this type of infrastructure.
So are you in favor of a line to go to Banff?
Yeah, I have. I always have
from
been.
the airport down to
downtown.
and
And let's be clear. I think, the biggest challenge with the privatized line going from the airport to Banff is going to be CP, right? KCCP, right? They have that line.
And the taxis.
Well,
because that's a lot of money out of their pockets.
Whatever it works out to be is the big challenge. The taxis are less my concern. More my concern is how do we get the blue line to the airport? Because I don't understand how you continue to say we're going to be a city of the world without connecting your airport to your downtown through transit. Every other major worldly place has done this, and Calgary has to step up and do it. When I was on and ran the transportation committee for the city, we moved the project forward, and a lot of that prep work has now been done. I hope that in the first year of our term, we've announced that it's now happening and moving. And so subsequent to that, we'll figure out how do we get the other rail lines in there. But I've always loved this idea of, economic corridor, right? So how could you connect Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, Banff, all of those things together through high-speed rail, right? Because I think that is something to really think about in our future.
I want to now turn to a topic that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And in October, the very first pledge you made was for 4 years, you're going to have a 0% increase on your property taxes.
Yep.
Now, I just wrote an editorial about this a few months ago, and I can tell you I'm still skeptical of that pledge because inflation happens. Provinces download onto property taxes because of their education portion, and things just cost more to do every year. Inflation. How do you make that promise without breaking it? Because everyone is having that vision of George H.W. Bush saying no new taxes, and then within the first 2 years, there was taxes. So how can you promise something that you cannot guarantee that it's going to be able to deliver because you're going to be working on a council that potentially will say, no, Jeff, we don't agree with you. We want to raise our taxes 2%.
Yeah, potentially. But again, go back to the strategic plan we've talked about, right? So that should be built into everything we look at doing over the next 4 years. The biggest component, I would say, to this all, well, there's a couple of things here. Number one, build tax base, right? At a time when we're talking about a housing crisis and an affordability crisis and we're in perma-crisis mode with the city council. At a time when they've crisised us to everything, well, what are they doing about it? Nothing. So when we talk about housing, we talk about affordability. Number one, why does it take 8 years to get a building out of the ground in this city? It's unacceptable, right? That should be permitted in 60 days, move the investment, get it built so that we stay ahead of the curve. So build tax base, whether that's through densification projects where density makes sense, whether that's through our industrial land program that we plan to bring more industrial land to the market, where that is building TOD, so transit-oriented development, a plan we've had in this city for 30 plus years, and to date we have 3 active projects, right? Build the density where the density makes sense and create the tax base and stop eroding the tax base. Part of that then is also getting back to spending in line, focusing on our core assets, focusing on our core lines of business. That's what we're going to get in. And that's why that strategic partnership or the strategic plan is so important. What's on the table for the next 4 years and what is off the table? Now, look, I'm not promising this for life, right? I'm very realistic about that. But I will tell you, again, where city council has failed is to manage their own books, okay? In a year where in the first 6 months of the year, we had a $220 million surplus. That is the equivalent of a 12% property tax reduction, okay? So when you think about the baseline budget, every $18 million you increase spending by is a 1% property tax increase, okay? So just take that and divide back your surplus. To me, council should have known when they were in budgeting, at least, any analyst will tell you, we predicted where the surplus should be and they could have acted accordingly. If they did nothing on taxes this year, they'd still be ahead by 3.5%. Okay. So the challenge I have is that people don't connect the dots. And council certainly doesn't connect the dots when it comes to money. I'm convinced there's people on council right now that don't understand how to read a budget. And I don't say that facetiously, because I do think we all come from different backgrounds. One of the things we're also talking about, just as a side piece to all of this, is getting a consulting firm to come in and work with council right at the beginning to ensure that they do know how to read a budget. It's really hard for a new councillor, and I can say that as, it's tough when you walk in and you're like, oh, we're in charge of this $5.5 billion corporation known as the City of Calgary. It's hard to ask administration hard questions of things like, I don't know how to read a budget, can you help? Because they work for you, and that's going to set a bad precedent. But if we give councillors the opportunity to work one-to-one with experts to say, can you help me do this? This is what I need. And we get people up to speed. Well, now we can have better predictability in how we're going to budget and what we need to be looking at.
Isn't that just hiring redundant? Because isn't that what administration is technically supposed to do, is tell you how to read a budget?
I think anytime you are, and consider this, council is the board of directors for the City of Calgary, right? Anytime you're on a board and you go to administration and say, I need help with this, what do you think their attitude towards you is going to be? So it's not hiring redundant. It's consulting with a group to come in and say, it's a short-term piece to say, help these people out, right? The other thing I'm going to do is hire a chief accountability officer to work under the mayor's office that will help keep our budget in line with what we said on the 0% tax piece. To me, obviously, we're going to have to look at tax reform. We're looking at, can we move to a 3-year assessment program, which is what most jurisdictions have done now? Get rid of the peaks and valleys. Because for me, it's not just about being predictive of where the city budget's at. I think the average household needs to be able to predict over the next few years what their expenses are going to be too. Because you're right, everything in life is getting more expensive, right? When we talk about affordability, I think a lot of people talk about affordability in the sense that, oh, it's the handouts, the things that we have to do to help others. It really isn't. To me, affordability is also, I look at my oldest right now, 16, right? In the next 10 years, I want my 16-year-old to be able to buy a house, let's say. My biggest concern is that if I don't buy a house now and take on a mortgage and create a rental property that one day they can assume, I don't know how they're going to get into the market 10 years from now. And so we've got to start thinking about, our housing stock, how we're building our city, are we keeping up with demand? And we've got to think about the taxation rates about, because those are high right now, and that all of these costs affect your day-to-day living.
But Donald Rumsfeld said it best, and I'm quoting a lot of American politicians on this show right now, and I apologize. But Donald Rumsfeld said it best. There's 3 types of unknown scenarios.
I thought you were going to be the other Donald.
Not yet. There's the known knowns.
Can you do an impression?
Not even close. The greatest mayor, the best.
A lot of people say.
A lot of people say. But there's 3 things that you can always count on. The known knowns, the things that you know that are going to happen. The known unknowns, you know that something's going to happen, but you just don't know what it is. And the unknown unknowns. And that's the area where a lot of people fall into traps, is things you just do not plan for. Now, in assessments, you don't have any control over how the assessments work. That is an independent body that goes out and assesses properties. They're supposed to go out and assess it. Usually it's just a click on a button and then it goes up, a formulaic calculation. So when you say 0% tax increase, I'm expecting that next year my taxes are going to be the exact same that they were this year.
And that's what we're working towards.
But assessment always goes up, because your house always gains value. It's the one thing that you can count on, because that's what a lot of people use for their retirement is their house. Do you want to freeze assessments?
No, I want to look at a better assessment program, right?
Really?
Again, this is the 3-year assessment value, right? I think what we've seen in Calgary is a lot of peaks and valleys when it comes to assessment, right? And so, a good example of, by way of having the blanket rezoning, automatically people's assessments went up by 15%, right? So that's going to get calculated into a very large tax increase for you, because it's mill rate times assessment is going to give you the value of what you're paying, right?
Okay. I'm just cautious to accept the idea that it's all going to be fixed in year 1, because you drink from a fire hose, right?
I'm not saying it's going to be fixed in year 1. I'm saying we're going to look at it over the 4-year term, right? I mean, we've got 4 years to set that agenda.
0% tax increase and not be able to pledge that in the first year? Because the first year, the budget that you're going to pass in November, and I'm not trying to be confrontational. It's because if I'm having this weird conversation with myself, then I'm assuming you're hearing this at the door. The budget that's going to be passed in November is being set by this administration right now.
Yeah.
and it's by this council.
Yeah.
So are you going in there on October 21st once you're sworn in, or October 25th, whatever day you're sworn in, saying we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater and we're going to start fresh?
Very possibly.
Really?
Now, I'll tell you the thing I
Okay.
know about it. You know, any administrator right now will tell you that elections are unpredictable, right? So I would hedge a bet that administrators downtown, you know, right now are looking at
All the platforms.
Davison has said 0%. This person has said otherwise. This person has this plan, right? They're going to have options that are there. But I'm not interested in pushing a budget forward until we have that strategic plan, because council has to get aligned on what are the things we're investing in, what are the things we're getting out of. And so when you think about it again, building tax base and stopping the erosion of our tax rate is what I'm interested in, right? Create more value, which means whether it's filling up the downtown and building further tax base, whether it's building on our industrial lands, whether it's building transit-oriented development, whether it's building new communities, all of those things will build tax base, right? That's the advantage we have for offset. And that's why you have to look at a 0% over the 4-year term. It's not going to happen day one in terms of the base that we're growing. But in year 4, you will start to see how those numbers impact, you know, going forward.
We've talked about housing a lot, and I'm cautious of time, and I want to get this because I feel like you mentioned it literally in the first 5 seconds of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Blanket rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
It is the crux that is sinking this council right now. And again, love it or hate it, agree with it or disagree with it. I'm not here to say that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make more housing available without blanket rezoning? How do we get more housing built? Because the last time I checked, unless we're going to start annexing Foothills, annexing Rocky View County, annexing all the communities around us, we're coming up to an edge right now. And I don't expect the Reeves of Foothills County and the Reeves of Rocky View County to say, you know what, Calgary needs to be bigger. Let's give them some more
Mm-hmm.
land.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do it?
Well, number one, I think I am the only mayoral candidate that has said definitively I'm rolling back the blanket rezoning. I think there's a lot of people beating around the bush on it. I'll tell you, we were told that this is about housing. We were told that this was about affordability. When the average row house starts at $760,000, I'm sorry, that's not affordable, right? Building 4 homes at a time is not keeping up with the demand of 70,000 people a year moving here. I'm sorry, it just isn't. So it's a bad plan, right? Does it, you know, from a blanket rezoning perspective, one of the greatest things I think about Calgary is the diversity of our communities. I think that by far is the best thing about our city. But putting a blanket sort of wash on everything, all you've done is cause friction between neighbors, right? I've literally had police officers tell me how they've been to calls where people are breaking out in fist fights over parking, right? And that's
You
just
must know
not
my
what-
neighbors then, because they park in front of my driveway all the time.
Okay, well, let's not get into fist fights out there. All
I don't
right?
fist fight.
You know,
I
yeah.
just call 311
Yeah.
and then wait 12 hours for them to arrive.
Right. So, you know, to me, you know, does row housing fit certain neighborhoods and does it have a place? Absolutely. I'm not anti-development in that sense. But let's be clear. When, again, go back to what I said, when it's taking 8 years to put a building in the ground, how is that acceptable? It's the city's own process by way our development is throttling off the market. This is a self-inflicted problem that this council has. You've put so much red tape in place and you've got so many people pushing papers and nobody's making the decisions. Well, unfortunately, time is money. And for a lot of these larger development groups, they're moving base operations to Houston. They're developing in the United States where it's a lot easier not because you've got, you know, the orange tangerine terrorist running around down there, but because municipalities have said, we want to be open to business. We want to get things done. We have a housing problem too. And we're going to move the needle on how we develop to make sure that we meet the demand of what's happening in our city. That's what Calgary has to do, right? When you look at the planning department, for instance, has grown by, you know, they've added something like 30% more staff or 3 times the staff, and it takes 4 times longer to get a permit. What's going on here, right? We need to, again, go back to the corporate culture thing I said. The number one thing, and I don't care if you're council or police or garbage or water or development, you're here in service to Calgarians. And we're here as part of that business to provide that service, to move the needle on how we make things better for you quicker, right? So if I look at my job is very simple. Build a safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone. That's it. let them succeed. But to do that, we've got to get out of our own way and start to look at, one of the things you could do with development is look at some of these big developers that the engineering firms they bring to the table are top shelf. Everything about these projects is quality. Yet we hold them up for years and years and years building, a building that we desperately say we need, when we could be saying, look, let's do this the opposite way. If you haven't heard from me, you've got a permit in 60 days. But what I'm going to do is audit you. So you're one of our top 10 developers, let's say. I'm going to put you on the audit system. You go do what you need to do to help me build our city forward. Because again, the city of Calgary should not be in the business of building. That's the development building community. Okay. My job's to just enable the environment.
And build the infrastructure.
And well, all of those things come with it, right?
Yeah.
So, but let's be clear. If you're saying these people are the experts, then let the experts do their job. Get out of their way. We'll audit them. And if they screw it up, they come off the list. You've now lost your privilege, of being on this audit path that you can go and just get moving. There's ways we can do this and move the needle on how we build housing, how we build new communities. I look at, here's a good example too. So when I was the councillor in Ward 6, right, I put in 3 new communities within existing communities on the west side. So Springbank Hill, West District, and Trinity's project down at Winsport. You're adding tens of thousands of units to the west side. 50,000 people are approximately going to move to the west side. We did that with very little opposition. It took some time to get consolidation and landowners to work together, but it was because we put forward a vision first that everybody lined up to it and said, here's what we can do. The community came on board because they said, yep, you know what? Let's put the density where the density makes sense. We're willing to accept that density there because it comes with amenities that the community wants. And we have the added benefit of achieving our housing and affordability stature because you've now taken 15% off market housing and built it into those places. So build communities within communities. You look at like Westbrook Station. It's a great example of where the city has gotten in the way over the last decade. You look at the Walmart that's down there, right? I mean, effectively that area has become Middle Earth, right? And I mean that when I say it. The crime is out of control. One of our largest city investments, the west leg of the LRT, is right there. Yet the city has throttled off development there for a decade. How are we not advancing that to say it meets all the criteria? You've got affordable housing, you've got density, you've got transit access. All of these things matter when it comes to developing. So to me, if we could put 5,000 units in there and stop fighting about 4 units with basement suites at a time, well, isn't that what we're after in terms of solving the problem?
How do we grow sustainably, though? Because that's the big concern that a lot of people have. Don't get me wrong, Calgary, largest city in the province. Sorry, Edmonton, but it's true.
Sorry, Edmonton.
I know. Sorry, Edmonton.
I mean, don't be too sorry. They have running water and a good hockey team, so.
Whoa, I'm a Ducks fan, so let's just not go there, right?
I mean, that's just,
that,
I did.
interview's over now?
I respected you up until that point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there will be some people in Calgary who say, I don't want Calgary to grow anymore. Yes, there's 75,000 people coming to our city every year. That's great. But I want Calgary to stay with the way it is right now because I love my neighborhood. I love the communities that I live in. I don't want to see it grow because we're bringing too many people into our community. How do you battle back against that? Because while we are a welcoming city, we are probably one of the most welcoming cities in all of the province. And I'm sorry to all the 343 other municipalities right now, but yes, Calgary is the place where people want to go. How do we grow the community? How do we grow the city in a way that we bring people along for the ride as well?
I think it's just like I said, right? I mean, when you talk to the average Calgarian that says, I'm concerned with
But who is
growth,
an average Calgarian?
Well,
I hate when politicians use the average.
You and me. So we both live in neighborhoods, right?
Okay.
I grew up in this city.
But is it renters? Is it people who own businesses? Is it the millionaire downtown in Marda Loop?
I think a lot of longtime Calgarians have said the challenge right now is that we don't respect community opinion anymore. And council has this very top-down mentality of we know better than you. And I'm sorry, they don't, right? Again, the diversity of our communities is what makes Calgary just an amazing place to live. I think this is the best place on earth you could live, right? Everything is going for us in the right direction here. Despite some challenges that we have, Calgary will always thrive. It's why the 70,000 people move here every year. It's why people see this place as a place of opportunity. It's why we have more small businesses in this place than anything else, which, by the way, is the largest contributor to the employment pool. I think people are frustrated because they're seeing their communities change. And it's not that the community's changing. It's that council isn't listening to how they would like it to change. And so there was this statement that council made about their housing plan. They said, we're going to push this off till the next term because we think Calgarians are tired of giving us their opinion. Well, it's not that we're tired of giving you an opinion. What we're tired of is giving you the opinion and then you do the opposite.
Can I challenge you on that for just a brief second?
Sure.
We all have our own moral compass.
Sure.
We all believe what is right and what is wrong in this world. We all have that moment where we say, okay, I believe that this is the right path.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hear from people and they say, no, this is the wrong path, this is the path you go. With a population of whatever our population is right now, you're going to hear a very large amount of people give very diverse opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Who wins in that ultimate scenario? Is it always the loudest voice? Is it always the majority, even if it is just the vocal minority that is saying what they need to say? Or is it Jeff? Or is it the will of what you hear when you're out at that certain day looking for an opinion? Because there are some people on council, and I'm not trying to defend them,
Mm-hmm.
that would say the people that came to this blanket rezoning were just people who were upset. The vocal majority were at work doing what they had to do. We didn't hear from the 80% of the population that doesn't get involved because there's that apathetic nature that is municipal politics. How do you ensure that the votes you make, the decisions you make, are not just based on the loudest voice at the time?
Well, I think I would push back on those councillors to say, go to the doors and start talking to people. I think that, when you look at a time when we're going to have a record turnover on city council, where you're going to see more one-termers have decided to not run for re-election. Well, why do you think that is? Like, I don't believe this whole, I got everything I wanted done in the first term nonsense done. Like, people are mad. Come to the doors with me. They'll tell you how mad they are. They're not just mad at this mayor. They're mad at this council. They're mad at the people who did this, and they're mad at the people who couldn't fight it. They're mad that people can't work together to put citizens first. And people understand development will happen, right? I think, we often focus on people that just don't want development. That is a very, very minor percentage of Calgarians. I think the average Calgarian understands development and change will always be how we innovate as a city. How we do that, how we respect the community, how we bring those voices to the table also matters. And I completely disagree that, there was 900 people that showed up to a public hearing, the largest public hearing of all time. But often council needs to remember that it's not just those voices, it's the voices in the community. And from time to time, certain city councillors will have a different perspective because of where they are in the city. Geography within our city boundaries does matter. And that's where the blanket rezoning doesn't work, because there are those communities that say, we actually want this and it brings benefit to us. That's great. Let's work with those communities and do those things. But, let's be clear. Some of the inner city councillors that have that opinion versus some of the outside communities, they're very different opinions, right? And the one thing that I'll tell you is, number one, they're mad because they thought they had a voice. They thought they elected representatives to represent their voice. And they're upset that nobody seems to be listening. And it's this very we know best attitude.
Last subject, because I've just realized we're at the 50-minute mark, even with our cuts in.
Mm-hmm.
I have one area that I want to talk about.
I talk a lot.
But I love it, because if you didn't, it would be really bad for a podcast.
It's really boring. Go like this while you're cut. On the other side, you got a weird hair sticking there. You got it. Okay, you got it.
Good. I won't have hair in a few months, so it's all good.
Yeah,
I'll cut back in. I want to talk about something you just mentioned.
Sure.
Because when you were elected on October 20th, on October 21st, you are going to have one of the most newest councils that this city has probably seen in a very long time. Even in 2021, there was a lot of people who, Richard Prutzman, your successor, he had come back. So there's a lot of people who are still on council that were on council beforehand, and this changeover is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And that means day one, you're drinking from a fire hose as mayor, but you're also drinking from a fire hose trying to help 14 other councillors get on board and get up to speed. Do you think you're the right person for it? To help people navigate what this next 4 years are going to look like?
Well, I mean, yes, I do think I'm the right person for it, and I'll tell you why. Issues aside, right? I mean, I think everybody's going to talk about public safety and infrastructure and affordability, and everybody's going to have a plan, right? Some of those plans may be more flushed out than others. At the end of the day, it's the largest turnover in council history. We know that going in. Leadership, experience, and vision are, I think, why people will elect me, right? Having 25 years in energy, technology, film, healthcare, having the experience of being on council and understanding exactly what those people are going to be walking into, it's all important in this election, right? It's part of the reason why I'm opposed to this party system and why I'm running as an independent. You're never really sure who you're going to work with, but we've got to find the common ground. We've got to, work together to say what is our plan, and then we've got to sell it to Calgarians, right? These are the things we've heard. These are the things we need to go and do. But that leadership and mentorship component is going to be huge, because we're going to lose, whether people feel like some politicians stay too long or not, you lose the history, right? You lose sort of the benefit of having the issues at the table. And, I always used to joke Ray Jones was always great for that, right? Because he was around for 30 years and there wasn't anything he didn't remember or know that you couldn't go to him and say, hey, what happened with this cat debate, type of thing, right? So
I hate to ask this question because I always put my foot in my mouth. How was Ray doing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
because he fell off the radar after when he retired, and there was nothing after. So
Yeah,
okay, anyway,
I think he's had some health challenges, and I
Yes.
wish him well. I think he was but it's, to me, it was having that mentorship from guys like Ray and Ward and even people like Drew Farrell who had the experience of having been there. We're not likely to have that in this council. And so again, looking to outside leadership, looking for the experience that people bring to the table, looking for somebody who says, this is the vision, this is where we're going. Here, folks, let me show you how we do it together. It's about making everything and everyone win together, right? As much as we're doing everything we can based on what we've heard from the public, when it comes to the 15 members of council, the one thing, again, I've always learned is show your work, right? If you want people to vote for your initiative, you've got to show them the merit of the project. And that often means everybody has to have a piece of the win. Because whether it's my initiative or somebody else's, but we think it's a good idea, I've still got to go represent that idea to my community, which means I need to be able to sell it to the community and say, this is what we said we would do. Here's how we do it. Are you with me? And that's where that experience is going to be really, really important going into this next election. I fear that if we have another record low turnout like we had last time, it's going to be more of the same, right? If you have the same leadership just with a different council, that doesn't work. If you've got people on this council trying to say, well, when I become the mayor, I'm going to do it differently. I'm sorry, you're already at the big table. You should know better. And you got nothing done. So let's move on from that, right? We need somebody who can bring solid values, pick those projects that Calgarians say are important to them and move them forward. Because at the end of the day, I think our biggest challenge, despite everything else in this city, is rebuilding trust with the public.
Is that priority one?
Priority one.
Do you think you can do it?
I think I have a record of doing what I say I'm going to do. And I think that's exactly what builds trust with people, right? Listen to what the people say. Do what you say you're going to do. You'll build trust. Because whether people agree with you or not, they'll say it's what you said you were going to do and you went and did it, right? It's when you flip the script on people that people lose interest. And I think, from day one with this council, nobody campaigned on a climate emergency, right? Lost trust. An arena deal fell apart. Lost trust. A bag bylaw went sideways. Lost trust, right? Blanket rezoning. We didn't ask for this. Lost trust, right? You have to be willing to listen to what people say. And if you don't, 3.5 years ago, I didn't think I'd be back here, right? I'd moved on with my life. But there's an opportunity.
So you didn't want to run 3.5 years ago. So after the last election, you were done, because many people would suspect that you wanted to run, and you always have wanted to rerun for re-election. But it sounds like from that statement, this is because you see the state of the city.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I kind of moved on with my life rather quickly. When you've got 3 kids...
I was going to say, your wife and kid must have loved the fact that dad was at home all the time.
Well, but I wasn't, right? I got back to work almost right away. Obviously when you lose an election, it doesn't feel good. You stick your hole in the sand for a day, but then you got to get back at it, right? And to me, it was really important to show the kids that sometimes you lose. Doesn't matter for good, bad, or otherwise. Sometimes you just lose. You got to put, one foot in front of the other, and you got to move on. And we did that, right? So moved into healthcare, and it's been an amazing journey. And I think over that journey, I had always sort of suspected that, we have a tendency in Calgary to re-elect the incumbents. I thought the first term was going to be a honeymoon for this council. I thought they'd easily slide into second term. Maybe long term there was things to look at. But even when the provincial election came around, there was a lot of talk of, will you run provincially? And then the federal election came around, and will you run in your constituent? Because obviously my MP had stepped down, and people thought, oh, he's going to run for that. I truly wasn't really interested in running an election again, right? It's just by way of people coming up to you and saying, look, I think we're off track as a city. Would you get involved? And, working in a hospital, you see lots of people every single day from all walks of life. When that becomes every day that somebody's saying, would you get back involved? Would you do this again? Can you come back to the table? That's when you start to change your opinion and think, well, maybe there is an opportunity.
So I have 2 questions left, and it's one that just
Didn't you say that 2 questions ago?
You'll learn very quickly on my show that I have so many
well,
questions.
I'm good. I just
Okay,
want to
good.
make sure you're not.
I'm no rush.
We just talked about do what you say you're going to do. You know what I mean?
Not name. Actually, screw it. I'm going to name names. Councillor Dan McLean, in an article in the Calgary Herald, I think he was talking to Rick Bell. I'm not sure exactly what reporter he was talking to or editorial he was talking to. He said, anyone who doesn't have a chance to become mayor needs to get out of the race because you're going to split the vote.
Sure.
That was directly pointed at you and Jeremy Farkas.
Absolutely.
Because he's running under Sonia Sharp in the Community First program, the Community First Party. How do you stop the split vote? Because many people would say you split the vote in the last election, and that's why we are here right now. Farkas could have won if the votes from you would have went to him, and he would have beat Jody Gondek.
So 2 things there.
Go ahead. That wouldn't have happened
in the last
FYI.
election. Jeremy and I did not add up to beat Jody. There was no splitting of the vote. She won fair and square. So anybody who says, well, we split the vote last time, we absolutely did not.
That's what I was going to clarify.
Simply do the math.
Yes.
Right? So, in fact, I think if you
2.
added Brad Field into that, we still didn't add up to beat her. So it was a fair win. Full stop. Going into this election, I mean, I suppose you learn a lot having gone through the process before, and I think that is an advantage as to where we're going. Number one, I think there have been consistent polls in January, March, May. There was one the other day. I'm in second place right now next to Jeremy. Councillor Sharp is well below in 4th place, or some of these polls maybe 3rd, a very distant 3rd. I won't be responsible for the vote split. I went in early. We set up a plan. We started campaigning. This is pure ego, right? Any city councillor right now that's looking for a promotion to mayor, they should be rethinking, and they should be talking to Calgarians because they're angry with them. You either did this to them, or you should have helped not do this to them. And the lack of collaboration, I think, is going to cost all of them their election.
So you're expecting him, not even outside the ones that are running for re-election, a massive turnout.
Well, I'll tell you, when somebody like myself is outpolling you and you're a sitting city councillor, if I go back to the 2021 election and looked at those numbers, which were better than they are now for that individual, I'd be having a serious rethink. So, if you look at the numbers right now, if their candidate gets out of the way, it's a clear path to victory. I won't be responsible for a vote split. She will. But I tell people this all the time. Everyone has the right to run. Everyone will run because they believe they're the right candidate with the right plan and the right values. And I respect that. It's up to Calgarians to decide how they don't want to split. And it's up to the funding folks to say, well, we're not going to spread money around then, right? So there's lots of ways you avoid vote splitting, but it comes down to, at the end of the day, everyone has to cast their ballot, and they're going to cast it who they believe has the best plan.
You were out front in this election quite early, last October. Now, we are 70 days away, whenever you're listening to this, less than 70 days away from Election Day here in the province, in the city of Calgary. What do you have to do now, between now and October 19th, when people are making up their minds to who their next mayor is going to be, to ensure you get in front of as many Calgarians as possible, get enough support from people from across the city, because you can't just rely on your own Ward 6 anymore.
Yep.
You're running as a whole. So the people up in Skyview, the people down in Seaton, all across this city are going to be looking at who the next mayor is going to be. What do you have to do? What do you have to get in front of to make sure you get your message out? Because there's an apathetic tone in this election right now. And I was talking with one of your staffers right before this interview. usually it picks up after Labor Day weekend when
Yeah.
people are back in school and
Yeah.
people are actually paying attention. But in 2021 to compared to 2025, not even candidates are putting their name forwards anymore. It seems like this is just a very low run campaign. Not yours, just in general. What do you have to do to make sure that you are the ultimate victor on October 20th, between now and October 20th?
I think you're right. I mean, apathy is always a big concern. It's about getting in front of as many people to talk about why this election's important. Again, the biggest turnover in council history, right? We need good people at the table. We need to have a plan that respects what Calgarians are telling us. We need to work collaboratively to go and do it. And it's all going to come down to the leader you pick, because the values that leader brings to the table, the experience that leader brings to the table, the vision that they have, all of that is going to matter on where we go for the next 4 and possibly 8 years. And so people really need to think about, what is the path I want for me and my family, and what does every Calgarian want? And so getting out to talk to as many people as possible, understanding their issues with what's going on in the city, and talking about how we address those issues, that's priority number 1 over the next 70 days.
Jeff, it is a pleasure. But before you go, I have one last favor.
Uh-huh.
Not question, but
Okay,
favor.
It's a favor. Okay.
We've talked about a lot of stuff in the last hour.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one message you want voters to take away from our conversation, from your campaign, about what you want to see what Calgary is going to be like in the next 4 years?
Come with me to build a safe, affordable city of opportunity for everyone. That's the whole goal.
Perfect. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this. For anyone who's watching or listening to this, just a reminder that the links to Jeff's social media campaign are in the show notes. I highly recommend everyone get involved, get out and actually vote, but also learn about every single candidate that's running, because at the end of the day, that's the biggest power that you have is your vote. And if you don't learn, and actually I should mention this as well, because I just found this out, register to vote, because you have to register before September 15th, if I'm not mistaken, unless you register the day of, which could take a little bit longer. So the links to that will be in the show notes as well. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or by visiting us on YouTube at Cross Border Network. Your support means the world to us. So if you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Now, quick editorial note before we wrap up. If you are a candidate running in this upcoming election in the city of Edmonton and you want to be featured on this show, reach out to us directly. We would love to have you on the show and hear your perspective directly. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 soon. Till then, everyone.